Okay, how's it going, everyone? So we're going to read chapter 3 of the Two Tactics of Social Democracy and the Democratic Revolution of the pamphlet Two Tactics of Social Democracy and the Democratic Revolution. What is a decisive victory over the revolution of Tsarism is the part we're about to read now. So, let's go ahead and get into this. What is a decisive victory of the revolution over Tsarism? The revolution of the conference is devoted to the question, quote, the conquest of power and participation in a provisional government, end quote. As we have already pointed out, the very manner in which the question is presented betrays confusion. On the one hand, the question is presented in a narrow way. It deals only with our participation in a provisional government and not with the party's task in regard to a provisional revolutionary government in general. On the other hand, two totally different questions are confused, viz. The question of our participation at one of the stages of the democratic revolution and the question of the socialist revolution. Indeed, the conquest of power by social democracy is a socialist revolution, nor can it be anything else if we use these words in their direct and usually accepted sense. If, however, we are to understand these words to mean the conquest of power for a democratic revolution, and not for a socialist revolution, then what is the point in talking not only about participation in a provisional revolutionary government, but also about the conquest of power in general? The quote, conquest of power, end quote, in general. Obviously, our conferencers were not very clear themselves as to what they should talk about, the democratic or the socialist revolution. Those who have followed the literature on this question know that it was Comrade Martynov and his notorious two dictatorships, the new Iskris, are reluctant to recall the manner in which this question was presented, even before January 9th, the date of Bloody Sunday, in that model of Tel Ender writing. Nevertheless, there can be no doubt that it exerted an ideological influence on the conference. But let us leave the title of the resolution. Its contents reveal mistakes incomparably more profound and serious. Here is the first part. Quote, a decisive victory of the revolution over Tsarism may be marked either by the establishment of a provisional government, which will emerge from a victorious popular insurrection, or by the revolutionary initiative of a representative institution of one kind or another, which under direct revolutionary pressure of the people decides to set up a popular constituent assembly. Thus we are told that a decisive victory of the revolution over Tsarism may be marked either by a victorious insurrection or by a decision of a representative institution to set up a constituent assembly. What does this mean? How are we to understand it? A decisive victory may be marked by a decision to set up a constituent assembly, and such a victory is put side by side with the establishment of a provisional government which will, quote, emerge from a victorious popular insurrection, end quote. The conference failed to note that a victorious popular insurrection and the establishment of a provisional government would signify the victory of the revolution in actual fact, whereas a decision to set up a constituent assembly would signify a victory of the revolution in words only. The conference of the Mensheviks, or New Iskra, fell into the very same error that the liberals, the Osvobodeniye, are constantly committing. The Osvobodeniye group prattle about a, quote, constituent, end quote, assembly, and bashfully shut their eyes to the fact that power and authority remain in the hands of the Tsar, forgetting that in order to, quote, constitute, one must possess the power to do so. The conference also forgot that it is a far cry from a decision adopted by representatives, no matter who they are, to the fulfillment of that decision. The conference further forgot so long as power remained in the hands of the Tsar, all decisions passed by any representatives whatsoever will remain empty and miserable prattle, as was the case with the, quote, decisions of the Frankfurt Parliament, famous in the history of the German Revolution of 1848. In this Neue Rheinische-Zeitung, Marx, the representative of the revolutionary proletariat, castigated the Frankfurt liberal Osvobodenice with merciless sarcasm, precisely because they uttered fine words, adopted all sorts of democratic, quote, decisions, constituted, in, quote, all kinds of liberties, while actually they left power in the hands of the king and failed to organize an armed struggle against the military forces at the disposal of the king. And while the Frankfurt Osvobodenice were prattling, the king bided his time, consolidated his military forces, and the counter-revolution, relying on real force, utterly routed the Democrats with all their fine, quote, decisions. The conference put on a par with a decisive victory, the very thing that lacks the essential condition of victory. How was it possible for social democrats who recognized the Republican program of our party to commit such an error? In order to understand this strange phenomena, we must turn to the resolution of the Third Congress on the section, which has succeeded from the party. This resolution refers to the fact that various trends, akin to economism, have survived in our party. Our conferencers, it is not for nothing that they are under the ideological guidance of Martynov. Talked of the revolution in exactly the same way as the economists talked of the political struggle, or the 8-hour day. The economists immediately gave currency to the theory of stages. 1, the struggle for rights. 2, political agitation. 3, political struggle, or 1, a 10-hour day. 2, a 9-hour day. 3, an 8-hour day. The results of this tactics as a process are sufficiently well known to all. Now we are invited nicely to divide the revolution in advance into the following stages. 1, the Tsar convenes a representative body. 2, this representative body decides under the pressure of the people to set up a constituent assembly. 3, the Mensheviks have not yet agreed among themselves as to the third stage. They have forgotten that the revolutionary pressure of the people will meet with the counter-revolutionary pressure of Tsarism, and that therefore either the decision will remain unfulfilled or the issue will be decided after all the victory or the defeat of the popular insurrection. So Lenin was being kind of funny there. He said the Mensheviks have not agreed. He said 3... The Mensheviks have not agreed among themselves as to the third stage, Either the decision will remain unfulfilled over the issue will be decided, after all, by the victory or the defeat of the popular insurrection. The resolution of the conference is an exact reproduction of the following reasoning of the economists. A decisive victory of the workers may be marked either by the realization of the 8-hour day in a revolutionary way or by the grant of a 10-hour day and a decision to go over to a 9-hour day. The duplication is perfect. The objection may be made to us that the authors of the resolution did not mean to place on a par the victory of an insurrection with the, quote, decision of a representative institution convened by the Tsar, that they only wanted to provide for the party's tactics in either case. To this, our answer would be 1, the text of the resolution plainly and unambiguously describes the decision of a representative institution as a, quote, a decisive victory of the revolution over Tsarism, end quote. Perhaps that is the result of careless wording. Perhaps it could be corrected after consulting the minutes. But so long as it is not corrected, the present wording can only have one meaning, and this meaning is entirely in keeping with the Osvos-Bolsdinier line of reasoning. 2, the Osvos-Bolsdinier line of reasoning, into which the authors of the resolution has drifted, stands out in incomparably greater relief in other literary productions of the new Iskris. For instance, the organ of the Tiflis Committee in the Georgian language, praised by the Iskra in number 100, in the article The Zemsky Sobor and Our Tactics. Social Democrat, an organ of the Social Democrat is I believe a newspaper. Organ of the Tiflis Committee, published in the Georgian language, praised by Iskra in number 100, goes so far as to say that the tactics, which makes the Zemsky Sobor the center of our activities, about the convocation, which we may add nothing definite is known as yet, quote, are more advantageous for us, end quote, than the tactics of armed insurrection and the establishment of a provisional revolutionary government. We shall refer to this article again further on. 3, no objection can be made to a preliminary discussion of what tactics the party adopt in the event of the victory of the revolution, as well as in the event of its defeat, in the event of a successful insurrection, as well as in the event of the insurrection failing to develop into a serious force. It is possible that the Tsar's government will succeed in convening a representative assembly for the purpose of coming to terms with the liberal bourgeoisie. Providing for that eventuality, the resolution of the Third Congress speaks plainly about the, quote, hypocritical policy, end quote, pseudo-democracy, end quote, a travesty of popular representation, something like the so-called Zemsky Sobor, end quote. But the whole point is that this is not said in the resolution on a provisional revolutionary government, for it has nothing to do with a provisional revolutionary government. This eventuality defers the problem of the insurrection and of the establishment of a provisional revolutionary government. It alters this problem, etc. The point in question now is not that all kinds of combinations are possible, that both victory and defeat are possible, that there may be direct or circuitous paths. The point is that it is impermissible for a social democrat to cause confusion in the minds of the workers concerning the genuinely revolutionary path. That it is impermissible to describe in the osvobosdinie manner as a decisive victory, which lacks the main requisite for victory. It is possible that we shall win even the 8-hour day, not at one stroke, but only by a long and roundabout way. But what would you say of a man who calls such impotence, such weakness as renders the proletariat incapable of counteracting procrastination, delays, haggling, treachery, and reaction, a victory for the workers? It is possible that the Russian Revolution will end in an abortive constitution, as was once stated in the Verperiod. But can this justify a social democrat who, on the eve of a decisive struggle, will call this abortion a, quote, decisive victory over Tsarism, end quote? It is possible that at the worst, not only will we not win a republic, but that even the constitution we will get will be an illusory one, a constitution, quote, a la Shipab, end quote. But would it be pardonable for a social democrat to obscure our slogan of a republic? Of course, the new Iskaris have not as yet gone as far to obscure it, but the degree to which the revolutionary spirit has fled from them, on the degree to which lifeless pedantry has blinded them to the militant task of the moment, is most vividly shown by the fact that in their resolution, they, of all things, forgot to say a word about the republic. It is incredible, but it is a fact. All the slogans of social democracy were endorsed, repeated, explained, and presented in detail in the various resolutions of the conference. Even the election of shop stewards and deputies by the workers was not forgotten, but in a resolution on a provisional revolutionary government. They simply did not find occasion to mention the republic, to talk of, quote, the victory, end quote, of the people's insurrection, of the establishment of a provisional government, and not to indicate what relation these, quote, steps, end quote, and acts have to the winning of a republic means. Writing a resolution, not for the guidance of the proletarian struggle, but for the purpose of hobbling along at the tail end of the proletarian movement. To sum up the first part of the resolution, 1. Gave no explanation whatever of the significance of a provisional revolutionary government from the standpoint of the struggle for a republic and of securing a genuinely popular and genuinely constituent assembly. 2. Confuse the democratic consciousness of the proletariat by placing on a par with a decisive victory of the revolution over Tsarism, a state of affairs in which precisely the main requisite for a real victory is lacking. Okay, so yeah, that is the third chapter of Two Tactics of Social Democracy and the Democratic Revolution. What is a, quote, decisive victory of revolution over Tsarism, end quote. So yeah, well, thank y'all for, tuning in. If y'all want to hit me up online or follow me online, please do. Marxist Saw. It's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium. All of these are at Marxist Saw. Follow me there and hit me up. And y'all have a great day. No doubt to go in.